Okay, so today we're going to practice some basic watercolor techniques, and what you'll need is a little cup or basin of water, something that's not going to spill. Okay, so mine's square. I would avoid, a really fragile cup that's really narrow at the bottom and might tip over, okay, since your laptop's in front of you. So you need that. Then you need your watercolor palette that you got from school. Okay, so it looks probably something similar to that. It may not be the exact same. We kind of handed out everything we had left. And then inside of that or in your bag, you should have had 2 brushes. Okay, so let's talk about these brushes for a second. This one right here is called a soft bristle brush. It's most likely going to look pretty similar to this. Okay, it's really soft. Okay, it's pretty flexible, and it's usually going to be bigger, okay, than this one. This is going to be your round brush. Yours might be slightly different because they come in a pack of all different sizes. So, or it could be the one that came with your original palette. So it might be the one that came with this. So there is a spot for here. Both of them may fit in there. They may not. So you might only be able to store one. Okay, a couple other things to talk about. This feature right here is actually a mixing palette, and you can clean that off. So we will be utilizing that later, but you're not stuck to just these colors, okay? So you can make a blue purple, okay? You can make a green brown. I said ground. A green brown. We're going to be doing a landscape here in a few classes, and most, trees are not this bright, obnoxious green. So we'll want to kind of muddy that color by adding some brown and making it look more realistic, okay? So you're going to be able to mix colors in this part of your palette. Okay, so besides your paint and your paintbrushes and your water, you're also going to need a paper towel, okay, or 2. I'd rather have a couple extra than not have enough. And then I'm using a little half sheet piece of paper for today. We're going to first talk about different types of washes, which look kind of like these. And then we're going to talk about details that you're going to use on your landscape projects. We'll probably break this up into 2 videos. So you're welcome to, if you have some of your nice watercolor paper that you haven't used yet, you can use one of these, but also you can just simply use a little half sheet piece of paper from your sketchbook. That is also fine. Up to you and kind of how you want to use your materials, okay? You do need to make sure you have at least 2 of these nice pieces of watercolor paper because we're going to do 2 paintings before the end of the semester, okay? All right, so I've got my supplies and I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So the first wash we're going to do, we're going to use our soft bristle brush, okay? Normally we would want to use what's called a flat brush, and it's looks like a rectangle, but we did not have enough of those to send home, and this one's probably more useful overall, okay? So we're going to use the soft bristle brush, okay, because it holds a lot of water. So I went ahead, I'm going to put this closer so you guys can see how I'm using my water here. So I'm going to kind of scrape some of my water off, okay? Another way to control how much water is on your brush is just to tap it to your paper towel here, okay? So go ahead, get your brush wet, and then load up your brush with a color of your choosing. I'd like you to stick to primary colors for right now, because we're going to practice some transitions between colors, and obviously primary colors play well together. So I'm just going to do blue because I've got quite a bit of blue here. So when I get the paint out of my palette here, notice how I'm kind of swirling it around like this. Okay, I'm not jamming it in there and getting all these bristles all messed up. Okay, I want to keep my bristles together. So when I go to do details, everything is stuck together here nice. Okay, so I've got some paint on my brush. It's not sopping wet. I can always add more water if I need to. So let's kind of see how this is looking. Okay, so I'm going to put just a smidge more water on it. And the more water you have, the easier the paint's going to go on. Okay, typically also the more water you have, the lighter the color. And you might find that some of the bristles, like this one's about to fall out right here, so I'm just going to pluck that out of there, okay? It is a soft bristle brush, so very soft bristles. Sometimes they fall out, just pick them out. It's not a big deal. Okay, and I'm going to do what's called a flat wash. So I'm just going to keep painting left to right and side to side, and I'm just trying to get this nice and even, okay? Water does help, okay? Smooth it out. Just trying to keep going it over left and right. Notice how I'm not like scrubbing my paper, okay? So you don't want to be painting it really hard like that, okay? Because then your paper might start to fall apart on you, okay? If you see the paper kind of balling up, then that means you're kind of either adding too much water or you're brushing on it too hard. Okay, so I'm just trying to get a nice even color coating here. I'm going over it left to right, side to side, okay? Just gonna keep smoothing this out. And again, if we actually had a flat brush with us, this would make it a little easier, but we can still do it with a soft bristle brush. So I'm just gonna keep trying to even that out. Notice how it kind of keeps making these lines on it. So I'm gonna just dab some of this paint off and just try to kind of smear this around, get it nice and even. Okay, but the paint does pool wherever your brush was last. Okay, so let's say that I got a bunch of water on this, okay? So it's kind of getting out of control here and it's, you know, not looking good. Maybe you like it, I can move it around. Okay, it actually kind of softened the texture for me. Okay, but say that there's just really, really too much water over here, okay? And then what I can do is just take my brush, or not my brush, my paper towel, and just kind of blot some of that up, okay? And look how much it lightened the color. All right, so I know that was a long, complicated process there, but now I have what's called a flat wash. Okay, so I'm gonna, again, pick up kind of any of that extra water that I don't want here. Okay, and I have a nice, even, flat area of color, okay, a flat wash. All right, next up, we are going to try what's called a gradient, okay? And we've done this before, so I'm just gonna stick to the same color here. Okay, no big deal. I'm gonna get a little bit more blue. I'm gonna go and load my brush up again, and I'm gonna really actually load it up because we're gonna go from dark to light. Okay, so I'm going to brush up here, okay, probably a couple strokes. All right, and then I'm gonna go to the water, okay, I'm gonna kind of swirl it, tap it a little bit, or scrape it. I'm gonna paint another layer, and hopefully you can tell that the color is lighter. Okay, I'm gonna do it again. There's almost no paint left on here, so we're gonna go from dark, medium, to light. Hopefully you can see those three color changes. Okay, I can go back through always. You can always go add more, okay? But it is hard to get your color to go lighter. One way to do that is with the paper towel, okay? So you can always kind of blot some up if you needed to. So that's called a gradient. And let's go ahead and label those for you. So flat, gradient. Okay, our next one we've also done a bunch with our dry media, not with wet media, but color to color. So this time I am gonna need more than one color. I'm just gonna go ahead and stick to blue because I've been going strong with the blue here. And I'm going to paint half of a little square here to be blue. Okay, so just like that. Then I'm gonna clean my brush off, okay? So one thing that's really nice about watercolor is it is actually very, very easy to clean your brush, okay? So I've swirled it around in the water. I'm gonna touch it to my paper towel, make sure there's not a color on there, okay? Then I'm gonna go back and get a little bit more water so I can get some paint, and I'm just gonna pick red. And hopefully you know what red and blue make. Purple, or violet is the correct term, but we can just say purple because everybody else does. So we're going to paint some red down, okay? Notice how I haven't touched my blue yet? I don't want them to mix yet because I want to see all three colors. Okay, once I've got my red painted, now I'm gonna overlap these, okay? I might have to get a little bit of that red off my brush because it might be a little too powerful for the blue. Okay, so if I need to, I can go back in, clean my brush, because I don't want to contaminate my colors. This is all you're gonna have, so especially that yellow. I'm sure you've all experienced in elementary school when somebody ruined the yellow. Okay, so clean your brush. It really doesn't take long. So I'm gonna get just a little bit more blue on my brush. Okay, and kind of go back over that and work on my purple. Okay. So this would be a really great way to make a sunset, okay? And transition between colors. Now, I also do actually have purple. So say I wasn't liking that purple, I could just go ahead and use some of the actual purple if needed, okay? All right, it is starting to pool in places because I've been working at it for too long. So what can I do? I can grab my paper towel here and kind of absorb some of this up. Okay, I'm using these school paper towels. I'm sure your nice Bounty paper towels at home are probably gonna work better than mine. This kind of just smears it around. All right, and we're just practicing, so I made that giant smear, and guess what? It's okay, we're just practicing. Okay, so this, I had some bleeding happening, okay? And bleeding is a term for when the colors smear together. I do also have this other brush, the round brush, which is a little more easier to control. It holds a lot less water. So when you're trying to do fine details, use this little guy. So we're gonna use him in just a second. All right, what we're gonna do now is we're purposefully going to try and have these colors bleed together. So I'm going to paint just a little square here of water, and you probably can't even see it, and that's okay. So I've painted that with water, and now I'm gonna take my round brush, my little pointed one, okay, whichever yours looks like. I'm gonna pick a color, well, I've got blue going on, and I'm just going to touch it to it and watch how it expands. So it can look pretty cool sometimes. You might decide this is going to be a really cool technique to include in your project, okay? So sometimes bleeding happens and we don't want it to happen, okay? And other times it can be a really, really cool technique. So we got purple. I'm gonna touch just a little bit of purple in there and watch how it expands. Okay, I can also pick this up and kind of move it around if I wanted to and see how the colors kind of swirl. So this is a really fun technique, okay? It's called bleeding. Okay, we're gonna do one more. This one is called Splatter, okay? It's pretty self-explanatory, so I'm just gonna stick to blue. Okay, this one you definitely wanna use your round brush, okay? You could try it with the soft bristle brush, but it really doesn't have a lot of flicking power because it's not very strong of a brush. So I'm just gonna simply bring this back. I'm gonna get really close to this, okay? If you're at your mom's, kitchen table and there's nice things around, please be careful. But I'm just going to kind of flick this, okay? And it's gonna get everywhere, and that's okay. On my paper, we're just practicing. So you could do this to create a texture, okay? Say you're trying to make like a gravel path, you could do this with some different colors of brown, okay? And have a texture that way. So I can do it with more than one color if I want, okay? And just kind of flick those colors together. So that's the splatter technique, okay? All right, there are two more techniques I want to show you that you may or may not be able to do, okay? And it just depends on what supplies you have at home. So one requires salt, okay? You can use table salt, sea salt, whatever salt you have. The other, you need like a little sharp object. So I've got a thumbtack. You could use, an unfolded paper clip. You could use a nail, just kind of put a needle for sewing. It kind of just depends if you have that stuff around. So I'm gonna go ahead and show this to you, and then I'll give you guys time to go gather supplies, okay? So for this, we're gonna do sgraffito with our sharp tool. You've done this before with the oil pastel. Remember we kind of scraped the color off? This time we're gonna scrape beforehand. So I'm just going to kind of scratch into this paper, okay? I'm trying not to rip it. I actually just did a little bit here, okay? Practice makes perfect. So you don't want to puncture it all the way through, okay? But hopefully you can see that little smiley face that I just carved, okay, right there. And then there's a little hole, so don't do that. Okay, and then I'm gonna take my soft bristle brush because it applies paint much quicker, and I'm just gonna paint over it. And you'll see what happens is that the paint pools in those crevices that you kind of cut on the paper, and boom, I've got a texture that's showing up. So if you're trying to have like really good details, such as like maybe bark on a tree, okay, or you're trying to do like stone or brick lines on a house, that would be really difficult to paint that small with watercolor that moves so well. So you could do this sgraffito technique beforehand, okay? And then all those lines will show up for you. Obviously you can't erase this though, so you gotta be careful. Alrighty, and the last one is we're going to apply salt, okay? So typically here is where I talk about how to mix colors, and in school we would make brown because I would not give you brown. But since you're at home, I gave you this whole palette. But I want you to learn how to mix colors. So we're gonna go ahead and make a tertiary color. So you pick which one you wanna make, okay? And a tertiary color, if you remember, there's 6 of them. I'm starting off by just adding water into my tray here, okay? Because I don't want to run out of this color. That's a mistake that I see a lot of people make, is they'll make like the tiniest little amount of paint and then it's gone. So watercolor is pretty cheap. It's super easy to clean up. So that's plenty of water. I want to make sure I have enough to get my little square, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and make a tertiary color, and I'm going to make red purple because I have been using kind of all of these colors. I'm going to stick to my theme here. You don't have to stick to your theme. You can make whatever you want. So I have swirled my brush around and then scraped it against, okay, the side of that little palette. So I've got my purple in, and because it is a red purple, that means there's more red in it than purple. So I'm going to just keep scraping in that color. Okay, and it's kind of looking like a maroon color, so that definitely looks more red than this color. Lucky for you, you have that secondary color already made, so you can compare it. Okay, and I'm just gonna paint a little square of it. We'll paint it right here between these two. Okay, so I've got that color down. It's actually kind of beautiful. And I'm going to then take my salts. Okay, be careful what type of container you have. All right, mine's got the little holes here, so I'm gonna use that instead of this giant hole right there. And I'm just gonna shake a little bit of this on. All right, and that is plenty. And what's gonna happen is the paint is gonna pool around this salt. This is a technique that you have to leave overnight, okay? So when we come back, we'll be able to rub off this salt, and you'll have a nice texture there. So this is another way you could create like a gravel road or stone or sand on a beach, okay? If you're doing something underwater, like a little ocean scene, you could make bubbles this way. And you can like move these around, okay? And kind of get them in the position you want. Because again, the effect is gonna show up when the paint dries, okay? There are definitely more watercolor techniques out there, but these are the base ones that I need you to know, okay? So you need to have flat, gradient, color to color, and bleeding, and splatter. Everyone should be able to do that, okay? And I would like you to show me at least one of these, okay? So hopefully you have some salt at your house, or you have something you can kind of puncture your paper with. I would try both though, because they are pretty fun. These are kind of the fun ones. So this is called Sgraffito, and this is just called the salt, okay? All right, so that is Watercolor Techniques Day 1.